Hello and welcome back to Season 3 of the M is for Mama podcast. I am your host, Abby Halberstadt, happy wife, mama to 10, Bible-believing Christian, and we are going to dive into a wonderful kickoff guest episode coming up that I think is going to really benefit you as you look forward to the school year and to starting off the fall with intention and with good routines in your home. But first, I want to highlight a brand new podcast sponsor, which is the Kings Ridge Elderberries. They make their extremely tasty, I can personally attest to this, and my children love it too, elderberry syrup from their cold-pressed, fresh elderberries that they grow on their family farm in Indiana. Fortify your defenses naturally with yummy tasting elderberry syrup from the Kings Ridge Elderberries at tkr.com, packed with antioxidants and vitamins to boost your immune system. Make sure you use the code MAMA10 at checkout. I'll put that in the show notes. And now I think you're going to absolutely love my guest, KyAnn, who is someone that through kind of a fire in her life, through the push to figure out solutions, has created a way for moms to identify the pain points in their organizational systems, in their routines and rhythms, and help them to both get those under control and find the focus for why they do what they do and choose the rhythms that they choose. I think you're going to love KyAnn's gospel-centered approach to creating peace in your home. I know I did, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. All right, friends, today I have a fun guest for you, a fun and helpful guest. Her name is KyAnn, just like the pepper. That's how she told me to remember it. And she is here today to help you with your motherhood and keeper of the home, I would say, burnout. And this is a topic that I get asked about all the time, especially on What Do You Want to Know Wednesday? Like, how do you do it all? And of course, my short answer is nobody does it all, depending on what your definition of that even is. But how do you manage what is on your plate well without feeling like you're completely overwhelmed? And I know that I have answers here that I've given you guys, but KyAnn is here today to share some really actionable steps. But before we dive into that, KyAnn, just maybe introduce yourself to our listeners and let them know why this is what you love to do and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited. I am KyAnn. I'm a wife to my husband, Matt. We've been married 10 years this year, and we have 3 kiddos that are currently 5 and under. So we have started homeschooling. We homestead in the city, like the crazy people that have a big garden. And we used to have dairy goats even in our backyard. We don't at the moment, but chickens and ducks and all of that kind of thing. And then I'm a podcaster as well. So I share all about helping busy moms find routine in their days and implement these intentional rhythms and routines to really get more done while also still being present with their family. So that is kind of how I spend my days right now. I feel like it really is a calling and a mission that the Lord has put on my life that I never expected. So my life has taken kind of a different turn in the past few years.
Wow. Okay. So one thing I love about what you're saying is that there are plenty of moms who hear that someone has these systems in place, but then they're like, but can they possibly be as busy as I am, or have as many plates spinning as I do, or am I going to be able to relate to anything? And I cannot personally relate to milking goats. I will say this. However, I do have a lot of plates spinning at all times. And it sounds like you definitely have the street cred for that. If you're homeschooling, have 3 under 5, and are doing the podcasting and the homesteading and everything. So I'm just going to ask you that broad kind of open-ended question that always makes me want to pull my hair out a little bit. How do you do it all?
Yes, the elusive question that I feel like everyone says. I mean, honestly, it's probably the same as so many share. To me, it's so much about boiling it down to the basics and the fact that I don't do it all. And that really is something that the Lord has really pulled out of me in the last few years because I walked through extreme burnout. So I've always been an entrepreneur and worked from home. That's a piece of my story. And I think I got to this place where I was trying to do it all, like kind of like the busyness is the badge of honor type thing, the one who wants to do all the things. And while I still have a lot of things, and it may seem like I do it all from that description that I just gave you, everything is a highlight reel, and where nobody is doing it all because every yes is also a no. And so I feel like this burnout journey that I walked through in entrepreneurship, it really kind of opened my eyes to a level of chaos in motherhood that I was just accepting as normal, honestly, up until that point. My entry into motherhood was very fast and furious. We struggled with infertility for 3 years, and then we were blessed with 3 kids in 3 years. And that was not ever the story that we thought we would have. I also have hyperemesis in my pregnancies. And so I'm hospitalized every other day for infusions throughout my whole pregnancy. So anyways, you can imagine that those handful of years, throw full-time entrepreneurship with my husband in there. I didn't have a lot of routines and systems, and I just kind of got to my breaking point, to be honest. And I realized that I couldn't do it all. And so I can share more about what that looked like for me, but it was taking a step back and really scaling back and saying, Lord, okay, I cannot do all of this. I've been trying to do it all on my own strength, and that's not working anymore. So what do I do from here?
I loved what you said about how every yes is also a no. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, this is something that I think we don't think about all the time because we want to say yes to all the things. And especially as Christian women, we want to serve in the church and we want, to do all the activities for our kids and we want to be with our friends. And maybe we have a business or maybe we don't. Usually you have something else as well outside of the home. Maybe it's a ministry, whatever it is that's taking your time and attention. And it all piles on and we get to this point where I feel like we get so overwhelmed and we're like, man, I have way too much on my plate, but we're already committed, in the middle of it. And we're like, what do we do now? And so I think the Lord really started opening my eyes to this fact that when I was saying yes to these other opportunities, whether it was work opportunities, ministry, whatever, those are also a no to something else. So it could be like saying yes to going to serve at my church could be a no to playing with my kids on the ground at home or opening the Bible with my kids. And it's not always, but I think that it's so easy not to look at the no's that come alongside the yeses. And for me, it was realizing that my big picture priorities, like my values for my life, were not actually being reflected as much as I thought they were in my small, like daily habits, what actually built up my days. And there's a quote that says, how you live your days is how you live your life. And so I feel like that is what the last few years have been, is looking down at some of the things that seem really small and insignificant, but ultimately those small moments actually add up to so much more than we realize.
I really like that perspective. Talk to me, or maybe talk to my readers about how someone who maybe isn't good at self-reflection and definitely isn't good at saying no, because I think a lot of us struggle with that. We are people pleasers as women. And while that is a good thing, as it leads us to serve others well, a lot of times, sometimes it leads us to serve people outside of our homes a lot better than we serve the people inside of our homes. We expect a lot of patience and understanding from those inside our homes and bend over backwards to make sure no one has to be patient or understanding outside our homes. And that's probably pretty backwards from where we should be. But tell me how someone who is like, I wouldn't even begin to know how to sit down and analyze whether my days are reflecting how I want to spend my years would even start.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it seems so big that then we get paralyzed and we're like, how do I even know where to start? And so I think because I kind of had reached this breaking point, I knew that something had to change because exactly what you just said, that was my life of feeling like I was serving all of the people outside of my home and keeping up appearances and doing all the things, seemingly juggling all the balls while behind the scenes not serving my family in the way that I really wanted to. And so practically what it looked like in my life was the Lord asked me to walk away from entrepreneurship for a season. And I just share that because that's a piece of what it was for me. It was a very defining moment of the Lord really being like, hey, are you going to follow what I'm asking you to do right now? And I had always been an entrepreneur. It's literally all I had ever known. I had wrapped up my identity kind of in that and didn't even realize. And taking that back, I think that I had to start really small with just one thing at a time and realizing that I had to have certain boundaries. The rhythms that I put into place are also kind of boundaries to protect my priorities in a way so that I can make sure that my ministry is my home first and then everything flows around outside of that. And I have a business now. The Lord has led me on this journey, but it was one thing at a time of scaling it back first and looking at, okay, Lord, how do you want me to spend my day today? What are these systems and rhythms that I'm running into that are so overwhelming and I don't even realize how much friction is built up there? And then I'm responding in anger, I'm responding in overstimulation. And yes, I absolutely, it's going to the Lord and working on your character in that too. But sometimes there's external pieces too that we can look at and eliminate some of those friction points.
100%. I feel like this is kind of similar to how I think of parenting, where people say, well, if your child's heart isn't in it to obey or to be generous, then you shouldn't require the behavior. And I feel like there is so much good that comes from practicing right behavior, even if we're not fully like understanding everything yet. And so, yes, of course, we rely on the Lord for our strength and motherhood. But everybody comes back and says, what does that actually mean? And one of the ways that you're saying that that's practically applied is that you scale back and say, um, what are my priorities as unto the
Mm-hmm.
Lord, praying about it, talking to my husband, using discernment, starting from the top down with, am I getting to my Bible reading today? Am I spending time
Yes.
with my family? Is there nourishing food on my table? I'm guessing those are some of your big ones. Those are definitely
Yeah.
some of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you say doing it in the Lord's strength, I think a huge part of that is going to be very practically going, what can I practice today that I know benefits my family? And then when I feel that niggling, what am I missing out on? The FOMO or the lack of recognition for those
Mm-hmm.
really mundane things that you're doing. And
Yeah.
like if you were out there doing a business or something else, it's not a bad thing, but you'd probably be getting more pats on the back, right?
Yeah. Then from your
And
3-year-old. Yeah.
right. Then
100%.
from your 3-year-old. Yeah. Yeah. Who's going to like give you a big old wet oatmeal kiss and be like, you're the
Yes.
best mommy I ever had. You're like, wait a minute. But yeah, the in the Lord's strength would probably be defeating those urges to run back there out there and be busy again. That's
Mm-hmm.
where you need the strength, not necessarily so much in the actual spreading of the peanut butter on the bread.
Yeah.
So talk to me, because I just kind of threw out some of my big ones. Um, talk to me about kind of what the Lord showed you in terms of what your priorities were to be. And do you feel like they were individual ones, or do you feel like they're ones that anybody that's wanting to prioritize their home could kind of grow from or use as their base?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I think the thing about priorities is we have like our big rocks, our relationship with the Lord, our marriage, our relationship with our kids. Those are probably going to fall in line for a lot of us. But then I always like to look at it like the smaller priorities underneath that, I think shift some season to season just based on the season of life you're in, the circumstances that you have on your plate, the ages of your kids.
Yep.
So there are varying things, even thinking about like activities that we're involved in, that shifts for us season to season. Even now, like with my oldest being 5, it has shifted multiple times on how much we feel like we have the capacity to handle and how much we don't, and we need to be at home more. And so I think with the priorities, I think of it kind of along the lines with rhythms. I think of 2 different camps of both being productive and getting more done. So kind of these friction points that we were talking about, and then also being present, because the rhythms act as those guardrails for my priorities in that sense as well. And so
Mm-hmm.
what I practically like what I mean with this home management side, getting things done, of course, things like tidy anchor points throughout the day really, really help with tidying up before you get to the end of the day and you're like, oh my goodness, my entire house is in
Yeah.
a disaster and I need to clean
Yeah.
up for an hour and I just want to collapse on my bed. So little
Yep.
things like that, or having a laundry system, a meal planning system that works for you so that you're not, I was constantly going in to the pantry at 5 p.m., not knowing what I was going to make for dinner, looking in there, and I had an idea in my mind. I have none of the ingredients that I need. So then I go to
Yeah.
the store to get the ingredients with the kids in tow. And by the time we're done with that, I am exhausted. I have no energy left to make the meal. So then
Yeah.
we just grab takeout, on the way home. And it just kind of defeated the whole purpose. I'm
Yeah.
not happy. The kids are tired. Like we're all stressed out. So those are some of the things as far as getting things done inside of the house. Some of the other rhythms, as far as protecting my priorities, I look at them like Family Sabbath. That is something we implemented several years ago. That has been huge for us just in protecting rest, honestly. As someone who is just kind of go, go, go all the time, I feel like I have to fight my flesh in that a lot to not just fall back into some of those patterns. Even small things like having reading time with my kids or going outside on the front porch to get sunlight in our eyes that build in, yes, there is scientific evidence that this is great for us in so
Yeah.
many ways. And also, it very practically builds in something that's so important to me, which is quality time with my family, very naturally to where it's just a rhythm in our day now and I don't have to think about it. So I think
Yeah.
your priorities are going to look different. And that's why it's really just like taking one at a time, whether it is on the productivity side or whether it's on the present side, because it's a balance of both for sure.
Yeah. Um, I think there's going to be a lot of moms that relate to go, go, go. And then I'm also hearing from moms that are like, I actually struggle with motivation and I am more on the tend to let myself rest than maybe I should to
Mm-hmm.
be able to make it to the end of the day and not be stressed. And I think we all have different thresholds for stress. So you can have a mom who, unless the countertops are completely tidied and wiped down and completely cleared of all clutter, her brain can't rest when she goes to bed. And you can have the mom that's like, you know what? We ran at it for a 30-minute timer and we'll get to the rest in the morning, you know? I think and as long as neither of those becomes an idol, I don't know how the second could become an idol, but the first could for sure,
Mm-hmm.
then those could work great. Like kind of you know what gives you the most life and what you
Mm-hmm.
walk down into and see, for example, in your kitchen in the morning. I think where you run into a problem on the people that are struggling with motivation is the amount that gets done in any one effort never gets to the point where it tips over to done.
Mm.
Our work is never done as homemakers. Like the thing that we just cleaned up gets messed up 5 minutes later, and we have
Yes.
to kind of accept that. So I love your idea of tidying points throughout the day where you know you're going to have less chaos or a little bit of nice order for a little while, and it's going to help like the next thing not be as overwhelming. We do that as well in the morning and the evening, and those touch points of cleaning for us save our rears all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So what about if it is a struggle with motivation, a struggle with, the L word, laziness? What do you tell those people that aren't go go go?
Yeah. Um, I think, I feel like you are totally right about there being two camps of people, with either going all in and hustle, 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 or really struggling to get the motivation up. And I think often on the side of motivation, we make the process out to be so much more overwhelming than it needs to be a lot of time. And I think about, like, if anyone has had a pile of clothes in their closet, in their office, whatever spare space you have that you need to go donate or sort through, and it's been sitting there for 6 months and you
Hmm.
haven't touched it. And
Hmm.
then you make some time and you're like, I'm going to do this. And you sit down, and every single time it takes so much less time than we think, right? But it was so daunting and overwhelming in our
Yeah.
mind. And so a lot of the encouragement that I give moms that are struggling to get up the motivation is, one, figure out the why behind why this is important to you. Our brain does this thing where it will loop things in the back of our mind. I'm trying to think of there's a term for it, and it's in another language, and so I butcher it every single time. I'm not even going to try to say it right now, but there's an actual term for why our brain does this. But it will pop up basically unclosed loops that we think we have in our brain, and it will bring them up again and again until it is either done or put into a system, because our brain is trying to help us. Obviously, it doesn't want us to forget that. Well, the problem behind it is that they were never getting started on it. And so often, if you can look at the why behind, so let's say you do want a tidy home, let's just use that as an example, but you're really struggling because it just feels like chaos everywhere. What is the deeper why behind why that matters to you? Is it so that your kids have a space that they can come play and independently play and have so much creativity and just kind of let loose? Is it that you want your home to be a sanctuary for you and your family to be able to rest in it? Kind of think through, write down a couple things. That has really, really helped me to get down to the bottom of, like, why does this actually matter in the moment? Because a lot of times I don't have the motivation in the moment. So I would start there. You can journal through it. Honestly, guys, this might sound crazy. You can also use Chat GPT. It might sound really weird, but sometimes you can, to bring up some ideas. Tell it, like, I'm feeling really stuck. What are some examples of why this is so important to me? And give it a little picture of your lifestyle or how you spend your days.
Mm.
Having that deeper why can give you something to grasp at in the moment when you don't have a lot of motivation. And then the second thing is breaking it down into small steps. So you don't want your first step to be, I need to declutter my entire house to get to that tidy point.
Yeah.
That is overwhelming, and you will
Yep.
never get started because you
Yep.
feel like you'll never finish it. And so break it down literally as small as you can go. And it may be starting with one room. Like, I am going to tidy my living room to the base that it was this morning.
Yeah.
Not, cleanliness, Pinterest perfect, but literally just to the base that it was when we
Or
started the
someone
day.
else's house. I think we do that a lot. Like
Yes.
if I can't get it to the level of my friend's house, then I might as well not try.
Yes. Yeah. And then we never make any improvement because we stay stuck in that place. So really breaking it down. You can also set timers. Those are really helpful too. So it could be a time-based thing of, I'm going to work on my living room, just tidying it to the point of this morning for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to be done and I'm going to shut it off and I'm going to move on. But that
And
gives you a
I'm going to
starting point.
interject there and say one thing maybe it's just my personality, but one thing I found with timers is once they're done, if you found that you've made progress, you're probably going to want to keep going.
Yes,
Like you're going to be
100%.
like, oh my gosh, it's so much better in just 15 minutes. Maybe I'll give it another 15. Where if you
Yes.
think about spending 30 minutes cleaning your living room before you set the timer, you might get overwhelmed and never start.
Yeah, 100%. I literally tell clients that all the time because every single time when they start a timer, it's a dopamine hit as well of like sticking to that commitment for yourself. And then you're like, okay, I can do another 15 minutes. And suddenly, several blocks of that time have gone by where, again, if you had started with that, you wouldn't have started even the first minute because it would feel so overwhelming.
So you mentioned having clients and you mentioned reaching a burnout level and you mentioned not having systems. I feel like that's going to be somewhat hopeful for people that look at productive people and assume that it must be that they are naturally organized with their time. They are naturally self-disciplined and they are naturally able to do something that somehow they're missing. I feel like that's an assumption. I think that's a natural assumption. I'm using that word a lot. I feel like that's an obvious assumption, but I also feel like our society is gravitating toward a woe is me, must be nice, what a privilege to fill in the blank. Like there's a mindset that someone else, whoever else is good at something, rather than saying, wow, what tips could I take from that? We tend to be like, well, they have something I'm lacking, and that's why,
Why
kind of
I
thing.
can't do that. Yes,
Right.
100%.
So how do you feel like you got, because obviously you were already a go. That part was in place, but you didn't have the systems. How do you feel like you got from going to the place of burnout to recognizing the systems and then even knowing which systems to keep and which systems to, because I just think about some people's systems and they exhaust me. I'm like, oh no, I would not thrive well with that,
Yeah.
but I know the rhythms that do work for me.
Yeah.
Maybe speak into that some.
Yeah. I think it is a trial and error process a little bit in that I tell people all the time, the rhythms that I do want you to take inspiration from it. And if it works for you, please try it out and copy and paste whatever you want. But it's something that when I'm working with people, you have to customize it to you because if it doesn't work for you, it does not matter. You won't do it anyways.
Yep.
And so there is, like, I'll just be honest about, there is a trial and error process to this. And I think it's learning to be okay with things not being perfect the first time and really going for progress over perfection, like 1% better each day and just trying again and knowing that it truly is not about perfection. And it really has been relearning so many things I thought there was an arrival point in so many aspects of my life, to be honest, like in my faith, in my life as a mom, in my business, in my home, where I would have it all figured out. And it would just kind of, I don't know, plateau maybe, and you just kind of write it out from there, Yeah. And that is not how it is, because if we just copy and paste systems and routines, and they're from Pinterest or whoever else, your best friend, your sister, and then we try and ride those out forever, even if they do work for you by some miracle right away, they're not necessarily going to work for you 6 months from now or a year from now when your season changes. And so I think it was equally learning to be okay with the process and also learning kind of the skills of pivoting and knowing how to notice what is working and what's not working and how to shift it without feeling like I had to burn everything to the ground.
Yeah. Or feeling like it was personal, like a personal reflection on you as a failure.
Yes.
I get questions from young moms a lot. I get questions from moms of all ages, but primarily young moms who are just starting out with kids around your age that your kids are. And what they tend to do is they tend to try to pick up their circumstances and place them in my life. And the round peg doesn't fit the square hole. That's not right. The square peg doesn't fit the round hole, probably. A square hole would be real weird. And they find themselves really frustrated because they're like, I can't do this. I can't do that. I'm not accomplishing this. I'm not any good at that. And of course, as you say, it's a highlight reel. They're all just commenting on the things that are in my bio that make it sound like I'm just the most productive person all day long, even though there are plenty of days that I'm just home in my sweats all day doing dishes and reading to my kids and scrubbing toilets and, scrolling on my phone sometimes. Like that's making dinner. That's what I did that day. But they are not comparing their season of life to their season of life that they're in currently. They're trying to compare it to someone else's. It could be me. It could be anybody else's. So I love what you're saying about the willingness that we have to pivot when something changes. So like, I'll give a personal example. Family dinners in the evenings with all of us home have been such a thing pretty much our whole marriage and parenting lives. But we have a 17-year-old who is in basketball, and we didn't prioritize sports a ton when our kids were all little because it felt just too chaotic and like they weren't even that into it anyway. But he's really into basketball now. He can drive himself to things. And we have some kids that like to go to a particular Wednesday night service that's different than our church, but it's a great gospel-centered, good theology church. And their homeschool co-op friends are there. And so they're not necessarily with us on Wednesday nights. And if we were to say the system that we had before for dinners has to work now when our children's interests and autonomy and, schedules are changing, we would be clinging to something that didn't work anymore, and we would probably be frustrating all of us. Is that making sense?
Mm-hmm. And I think too, then we tell ourselves stories about that as well when we hold on to it too long, where then we start to feel like a failure, or we feel like maybe our priorities are even out of whack. And I'm not saying our priorities are never out of whack. That obviously was a piece of my story, and it's something to use so much discernment and wisdom from the Lord on. But sometimes the season has just changed, or the circumstances, and you just need to shift a little bit. And you acknowledging to yourself, like, okay, we're going to shift this into what works for us now. It feels a lot different, at least for me, in my mind, in my body, in my life, to tell myself I am specifically doing this on purpose for this reason because things have shifted, rather than adopting this either victim mindset or just guilt, and kind of wallowing in that, because that can be really
happening
dangerous
to me. Oh, yes, it can, for sure. Yes.
And being stuck in that chaos in the survival mode, and that leads to the next decision, and suddenly everything in your life it feels like just you're drowning in all of it, and that can escalate really quickly too.
Okay, so I agree with everything you're saying. And if you were to walk into a room of stressed out burnout moms and say you don't have to live in burnout, and they're like, listen, my husband's a truck driver. He works, 7 on, 1 off, and is rarely home. You don't know my life. You don't have my life circumstances. Do you feel like there's hope for every circumstance, for every kind of burnout?
That's a good question. I do. I think every situation is not going to be the same, and the application is not going to look the same 100%. But I think there are small tweaks to make that better. And I mean, we know the Bible is full of stories of circumstances that did not go according to plan and that nobody would have chosen. And yet so much good is brought through that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we have to sit at the feet of Jesus and say, okay, Lord, this is not what I would choose. This is not ideal. But what is that next right step that I can do right now to come to you and to come ask for your strength and your wisdom for how I change my life, instead of just seeing all of these circumstances as happening to me? What is one way that I can step up and decide to get out of, survival mode keeps coming to mind, because it really is a space where you feel stuck and you feel like you have no choices. And I don't believe that we're meant to live like that. I think we have so much more freedom than we think we do, but we have to step up and choose to walk in that, and to put that on truly, as the armor of the Lord, and to walk in that truth.
I love that. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free, not to return to bondage. And that's talking about salvation, but I think it can apply to so many areas of the Christian life. So what would you say to the mom who is spending a lot of time on social media and who is having a lot of her frustrations with her circumstances validated? It is too much. The division of labor isn't fair. This other person has help and you don't. You're completely alone. You don't have a village. If they would just tell you the truth about motherhood, they would have told you nobody's thriving. That's a really common narrative in a lot of social media accounts that are claiming to be truthful, but truly are focusing only on the burnout aspects of motherhood. What would you say to that mom?
This is one of the main reasons that I felt so I mean, the Lord put this call on me to speak up now and talk about this. And this is one of the main reasons, because this was the narrative that I was seeing pushed as a young mom everywhere I looked constantly, that this is how motherhood is.
Mm.
And I think that I really, like I said at the beginning, where I thought that I was accepting kind of this chaos as normal because I thought it just was part of motherhood, one, and two, definitely a part of like being in the little years, being in the trenches with little
Yeah.
kids. And absolutely, there are so many hard things about being in the trenches with little kids. However, back to this idea that we have so much more freedom than we think we do. And also, we have to be so careful about what we're putting into our minds, into our hearts, because out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And that
Amen.
is what perpetuates, I think, a lot of these cycles, the overwhelm, the anxiety, the comparison, so many aspects here. And for me, this was one of the things that the Lord really, really convicted my heart in social media. I had grown 2 previous businesses fully on social media. And after this period of walking away from a business, I was fully a stay-at-home mom. And once I walked into building a new business, the Lord opened this door that I'm doing now. And I was on social media, and He really convicted my heart to, I had started to do a lot of boundaries around social media in layers. I would start with, what did I start with? I think I started with like taking the evenings off. And then I moved up to like taking Sabbath, where I deleted it off my phone entirely. Eventually, I took full weekends off, but I was still running my business on there. And I just was noticing, one, how much time I was wasting, and two, how much was getting in my head that I wasn't choosing to put in my head, and seeing that pop up. And I do think that you have to do the work to notice, or you don't realize how subtle it is and how much it builds up in
Yeah.
your heart. And
Yeah.
so I think I had started to open my eyes to how much that was building up. And the Lord asked me to walk away from Instagram entirely, delete it off my phone, was not present on it at all in the middle of building this business. And I was off for over a year. I didn't know if I would ever come back. I just came back last month. And it was this journey of truly the Lord stripping everything away. And yet it gave me so much clarity, like so much clarity and so much discernment now being back on social media of, to be honest with you, I actually don't scroll at all. I do use it some for business here and there. I have not gotten back into scrolling at all. And it's just something that I'm doing to protect myself, to protect my time. I have very limited time in the season. But I can tell you that I couldn't have done that without just deleting it entirely for a season and
Yeah.
really stripping it back. So do I think that getting off social media is the answer for every single person? Probably not. Do I think that it would help a lot of people? I do. At least putting some really strict boundaries, or maybe it is getting off for a season like I did and coming back with some healthy boundaries and rhythms to move forward. But we're so stuck in the midst of it. I grew up with social media, and it's been such a huge part of my life. And so getting to a point where I deleted it off my phone and I had no idea what my friends were talking about, or like, it just put blinders on in my business, but also in my life, of like, this is what God has called me to here in my home. And I can't tell you the amount of relief that it brought too, of even just the comparison aspect of, I thought that I had worked through a lot of that with the Lord, and yet still we're not meant to see as much information as we do on a daily
Yeah.
basis on
Yeah.
social media. And as a young mom, you're basing so many of your decisions on how you spend your time, your money, all of it based off of thousands of people's lives that you haven't even met.
That's so good. And as someone who is providing content on social media, I will often say, if what I'm doing here is not of value to you, if what I am doing is, I'm kind of careful with the phrase make me or cause me, because we are ultimately responsible for how we consume and respond to information. But there are things where we feel immediately a response of jealousy, envy, anger, sadness, lack of value, all of those things. And we have to be really quick to take those thoughts captive. And we may not have the tools to be able to do that if we grew up on social media. I'm so grateful that I didn't grow up on social media, and that as a young mother, I started blogging when I had 3 children and they were all fairly young, but social media was still in its infancy. And so a lot of the things that I did that I felt confident to do, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to feel confident. I didn't know I was supposed to be completely overwhelmed. There are moments of
Yes.
overwhelm. They definitely were still there, but there
Yes.
were things that I just did because they had to be done, and nobody was telling me it wasn't fair that I had to do them, or that it was too much, or that and so I think that that was a mercy. Um, But yeah, we have to be willing to say, this causes me, or at least I am more prone to react in this way. So I'm going to need to take a break from this. And it can become an idol so quickly that can feel like you've just lopped off an arm or a leg, which is kind of what Jesus tells you to do
Yes.
if something's causing you to sin.
Yes. I mean, we are so addicted to our phones in this day and age, too. I mean, the apps and the people who create them are paid so much money to keep us on them.
Yeah.
And so I think even one of the biggest things for me was just realizing it was the comparison. And it also was how much time I was spending while my kids that I had prayed for so long and they're little were right in front of me. And yet, no matter what I did, I was grabbing my phone, like literally without even thinking about it. A lot of times I have a few minutes to sit down on my couch and my kids are playing happily. Am I grabbing my Bible? No, I'm grabbing my phone and I'm scrolling through social media. And sometimes even I think that can be, we can disguise that as there are so many good things on social media. So I want to be careful with how I say that. I think that we can sometimes disguise that as spending time with the Lord when we're scrolling and not actually making enough time in our daily life to truly open our Bible, to sit there and pray through things rather than just getting this quick, almost like hit while you're scrolling Instagram and thinking that's the same.
Yeah. And that is what I am seeing over and over again, is a lack of biblical literacy and a desire to be spoon-fed,
Yes.
and given specific recipes for specific outcomes, preferably the easiest outcomes. So I think that there's going to be maybe a lot of conviction from what you just said, but I think that's great because how old are you, KyAnn?
I'm 28.
Yeah. So you are a full almost 15 years younger than I am. You've had a completely different experience with social media growing up. And so many of the moms that I get to talk to are your age, your circumstances, have your numbers of kids in those, in that range, that level of like commitment to your family and time, demanded of you, and just the physical demands, even with still having young children. It's not the same thing when you also have older children. And it's not even because you're just passing them off all the time at all. It's because that's the assumption, like, oh, well, then that must be because parentification and you never do any work anymore. No, you still do lots of work, but there's a natural spreading out of that work when there's just more going on with siblings to distract the 4-year-olds who might otherwise be right underneath your feet asking you for something all the time. So it's just a completely different circumstance. But I love that you're speaking into that and saying, however you worded it, do I think everybody has to get off social media? No. Do I think many people would benefit from being really careful, or, taking a break or having a fast? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we all would. And I am completely guilty of the addiction to the phone too, even though I'm not a huge scroller most of the time. I have accounts that I very specifically go and find, and they're pretty small list. And then I'm on there producing something. I'm answering a DM or I'm writing a post or whatever. But even then, you have that moment of rest, and where does your hand want to go?
Yeah.
So I know that's not
Scrolling.
what this entire podcast is about, but I think when we're talking about productivity, when we're talking about burnout, we need to be a little bit honest about how we're actually spending our time.
Yeah.
And that's going to be that is going to be the biggest time suck for this generation, for sure.
And I think too, I had heard some older moms that told me a few years ago about when you get to the teenage years, which clearly I'm not there yet, but how much brain capacity is needed when you get to that space. Because one, how good it is to have these rhythms of connection time so that they feel comfortable coming to you with these bigger, harder, more complex life issues. And that really stuck out to me. This was when I was doing a lot of this work to build that into my day. But two, just how much people talk about getting to the older years like it's going to be so much easier, I think, in a lot of ways than being in the trenches. And it's not physically as demanding as what I've been told. And I'm sure you have so many thoughts because you've been through this. But emotionally, you have to be so much more available in order to receive those conversations. Like, you have a teenager come to you at 10 p.m. is what she was telling me, and they want to talk about really, really hard life issues, and you're exhausted. And that stuck out to me because I was like, if I feel this depleted right now, and we're not having those conversations yet, am I going to be available? Am I going to make myself mentally, not just present, but actually present in the moment enough to have an intellectual, connecting conversation that points back to the Lord in the way that I want to with my child when they're 15, struggling with something, if I'm so exhausted all the time because every minute of my day is going to something, whether it's scrolling, all of the different things. And then you just have, there is like capacity, brain, there is a finite amount of energy that we have, truly.
Yeah, there really is, which I proved to myself the other day when I literally planned to go teach a class at a wrong time. It's a class I teach every week. I used to teach it at the time that I showed up for, but it had been an insane week of where my girls and I are writing a baking book and we are shooting all these recipes. And I just realized I had gotten to the point where my brain was filled up and stuff was just falling out when like they call me and they're like, "Why aren't you here?" And I'm like, "Because I'm dressed and ready to walk out the door. I don't need to be there, you know?
What are you talking about?"
And my brain just couldn't do it anymore. Yeah. And I think like, what an embarrassing example because this is your job and there are people waiting on you. But I think that's such a tangible example of what it looks like to have too much on your plate. One thing I would add to that is something I have learned over the last 5 years of having had author, speaker, like entrepreneur added to my plate on top of having a lot of kids and being a homeschool mom, and that just feels like completely insurmountable, is that there often comes seasons when I'm asked to be at capacity for a time. Like for me, it was about 6 weeks this spring. And missing that class was right at the end of that 6 weeks, where I was just, my brain was like, done, I've checked out. But it's when you find yourself constantly at capacity in the red. So when I know those seasons are coming, like my husband and I make allowances for them and we plan for them and we are very intentional with the time that we do have in them. But then they're done and kind of life chills out a little bit more. And I'm grateful that it kind of does undulate some and you can get a whole lot packed into those 6 weeks and then things get normal again. And not everybody's life is like that, certainly. But maybe that's another note for moms to consider is that if you feel like you're in the red and you don't see a way out, kind of sit down and pray and make lists and look at what could be an exit strategy for the season that you're in if there isn't a built-in one like the end of VBS or the end of a pregnancy or a short-term job that you're doing, that kind of thing. Because, you can't stay in red forever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that I talk to moms about a lot is I think there is a time and a place for a push season is kind of what I call it, like what you just explained. But it's knowing how to notice that that's coming and prepare for that. And then also the off ramp, like we always schedule in time where things are going to be slower after I have a launch or after I have a workshop or whatever it is, so that then we can integrate back into our normal rhythm, get used to that, rest a little more even than normal so that I'm not just running on empty. And I think where I was at before was convincing myself that this was just a season and not realizing how much one season rolled into the next, into the next, into the next. And there was no end. So that's what it is for me. Is like, if we are living in that chronic survival mode, overwhelm day in and day out, I think that's a red flag that we need to shift some things up and change things there.
100%. KyAnn, tell my listeners about what you do with your business. You've referenced it, but tell us what it's called, what you do, how they can find you, how they can take advantage of these strategies and wisdom the Lord has taught you.
Yeah, absolutely. Best place to find me is probably my podcast. So it's called Simple Rhythms for Busy Moms. It's really everything we talked about here, how to simplify your daily routines for more time with your family. That ultimately is like my biggest heart. So it's intentional systems and routines, boundaries to actually simplify and organize your life, to get things out of your head and actually put them into systems, and also to build in rest and margin so that you're not just running constantly, but that you actually have, like we talked about, those off ramps to your day, to your week, to your month, to the busy seasons, as well as the slow seasons, that you have that built in, just truly finding your identity in Christ and not your to-do list. So I have the podcast, and then the second place I hang out the most is my free Facebook community. So I'm in there daily. It's a bunch really of just like-minded moms. Some of them have businesses, some of them don't, trying to balance motherhood, homemaking, a lot of them homeschool, not all of them, all of that kind of thing. Just a Christian group of women that really have a lot in common. We do fun challenges like quiet time challenges. We've done like walking challenges, daily walking challenges to increase our movement, different things like that, where you can have accountability and get to know other people. So you can come find that. I have a free morning routine download, I will say, in there. If you are really trying to just kind of simplify your day, build in some time to breathe and feel like you can get your head on straight, whether you're sleeping through the night or not, I have a free morning routine download you can grab in there. So you can head to bit.ly/Simple Rhythms Community to get all of that stuff. I am on Instagram, not too much, but I'm there some at KyAnn and Matt as well. So I would love to connect with any of your listeners. Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing.
And you did a great job. Thanks for being on. We'll put all of that information on where to find you in the show notes. And I know that this will be an encouraging episode to so many moms who are just looking for a lifeline as they kind of feel like they're drowning. So I appreciate you sharing with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Abby.
Of course. Y'all have a great day. If you enjoy the MS for Mama podcast, I would be so honored if you would subscribe and follow along, maybe share with friends or even leave a review. And if you want more content on motherhood and biblical responses to cultural issues, be sure to follow along on Instagram at m.is.for.mama.